Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 550xp chainsaw. Customer complaint is that it's not oiling. Now, this video doesn't really matter that it's a 550 or if it's a Mark 1 or Mark 2. It's about saws that won't oil and some basic things you have to check. So you saw me look into the oil tank there. And when I looked in it, I cleaned the cap before I opened it up. Now that's easy to do on the workbench. Out in the field, maybe a rag or a paintbrush or something. Clean that debris away from the cap before you just pop it off of there and let sawdust and dirt fall into the tank. And in fact, on this video, I do believe we have to flush the tank because it had a lot of debris in it. So another, debris in a tank, that's one reason why a saw might not oil. Another reason could be that where the oil comes out of the crankcase and feeds the bar, maybe that hole is plugged in the bar and the oil's not getting to the rail. So there's the hole, and in this case, that hole is clean. So any oil that comes out of the crankcase will make it into the rail and lube the chain. That discharge hose right there is where the oil is going to come out. Let's see if we have any oil. So it kind of looked like there was oil right there, but it just wouldn't pump. And, that's a good sign that the pump is probably trying to work, but there's no supply of oil to it. Let's dump this tank and see what's inside. Now, I know you can't tell, and I can't see it looking in this video, but we're dumping a lot of crap out of that tank. A lot of wood product. So we're going to flush the tank out. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I usually have a funnel full of gasoline sitting on the bench. Sometimes I'll just dump gas in there and swish it around and run it out. This time I'm using either carb or brake cleaner. And I'm making a mess. I still can't tell if it's carb or brake cleaner. And that pan is so dirty you can't really make out the debris that actually came out of the tank, but it was a mess. There was a lot of wood in there. So we got it flushed out. And we're just going to put our cap back in place here. No oil in the tank while we work on the pump on the other side. So this is a specialty tool for removing a clutch on this saw. You'll notice my left hand was on the stop switch holding it down, because if for some reason that didn't just spin off of there and it cranked the engine over, there's the potential that it could start. So this plastic piece is whitish, yellowish colored plastic piece. Is a pinion gear or a worm gear. It's a little bit beat up on the inside, but the threads are good. And I'm thinking we can reuse that. So the black piece surrounding the crankshaft right now, that's your oil pump. And we're just going to clean a little bit of debris away from it and spin out the two screws that hold it in place. These screws typically have Loctite on them, so they might come out kind of hard. These holes are usually, on this model, tapped right into the crankcase. So we put the Loctite on there to seal the threads. Now, that hole right there that we're looking at is the feed hole for the pump. the oil that comes out of the tank goes right through that tiny little hole. And it looked like there might have been a little bit of debris in there. You know, it's an oily mess. It's kind of hard to tell. So we're going to remove this chain guide plate. Got to kind of get it around the brake handle to get it off of there. There we go. And then this oil hose is a combination suction and discharge hose with the pump in between. So we're going to pull it out of the crankcase. You got your screen or filter on the end. But in the middle, you got the part where the oil pump rides. One half of it is the suction and one half is the discharge. But there is a ton of debris on that suction side. I'm trying to kind of show you the debris that's in there. It's not... I mean, you can see there was some schmutz on the end of that pick. But there's a ton in there. So we're going to blow that clean. And we're going to blow through the discharge side as well. And we blow out the filter. So we flushed the tank. We've cleaned the filter. We've blown out the oil lines. And we cleaned the intake and discharge holes on the oil pump. We're now going to just clean up that pump a little bit. Well, that's what I thought we were going to do anyway. I guess we looked into the tank there to see if there was any more debris. And actually there was a piece of something hanging out in there, so we just got that out of the way. These saws don't typically leak. This design is way better than, say, a 350 or a 450, I should say. Those are bad for leaking. This design is pretty decent. So now we're going to clean up the pump. Be careful because on the end of the pump, opposite of where we were just looking, where the discharge hole is, there's a little plastic cap pushed in there, and you don't want to blow that out of there and lose it. And now we're just inspecting the pump gear itself, making sure the pump rolls free. Once we're satisfied that it's clean, we're going to put it back in place. It just slides into the hose. And then we'll put some Loctite on these pump bolts before we thread them in. So I picked up a new tool, and I'm going to describe it to a coworker here. See if you can figure out what it is. Did you figure it out? I know what it is, and that description didn't really do it justice. I'm not even sure if I'm going to tell you what it was. Maybe at the end I'll throw up a picture of it. Alright, so our pump is Loctited into place. Our lines are clean. We're just going to blow some debris off the back of this chain guide plate before we put it in place. And there's a single screw that locates that. You know, them dollars worth of tools in the box over there, and I'm using a scrunch to tighten that thing up. So we're going to put some grease on this worm gear. And then I want to clean the cross-drilled hole in the end of the crankshaft. First I'm going to blow any debris out of it before I put the bearing on there, and I'll show you how that bearing gets lubed. So when you put this grease gun in the end, you'll see that it just pushes some grease through and really quite effectively lubricates that bearing. You can also see it's kind of important to maybe roll the drum while you're lubing that bearing. Try and get grease in the whole thing. Although a couple pumps would be more than enough. Probably one pump would be more than enough if you do it periodically. I would say anytime you got the clutch cover off would be a good time to do it. So now we're going to run that clutch back down, reverse threads on this, and I'm just holding the starter rope out there so I'm not binding against the rope when it clamps down. Now we can dump some oil in it. And then we're going to fire it up and give it a test run. If it's oiling, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 550xp that had oil issues. Thanks for watching. Later. So this is that tool that I was trying to describe to a coworker. You can see that it's a vice grips, right? On this side, there's a couple of pins. On this side, a couple of blades. The tool's called motorcycle clutch hub holder or flywheel holder. Now, I don't know. I can only imagine this is the clutch hub side. Maybe this works on some clutch hubs. I don't know. I'll tell you what it does work on, though, is chainsaw clutches. Sometimes you have a clutch that'll take a 2-pin like this. And what I found works pretty good is if you just adjust the vice grips to the width of the pin on the clutch, that means you can just put it to that size and it's going to hold there. I mean, it would go tighter. It's not going to open up. I've only used it a few times, but when I didn't have the right clutch removal tool, this has worked quite well. And as far as flywheel holding, I haven't tried this yet, but I might. We'll see what happens. So that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. Later.